The evening started innocently enough, just as any other family gathering might. My husband Steve and I were hosting a small dinner party at our home, inviting a few close relatives over for the night. Among the guests was Steve's nephew, Alex. A bright young man in his mid-20s. He had always been close to Steve, especially after his father passed away, and we both considered him almost like a son. Dinner went smoothly, with laughter and stories flowing easily over wine and conversation. I had known Alex for years, but this was the first time we had really spent extended time together, without a crowd. As the evening progressed, Steve suggested that Alex should stay the night, given that it was getting late and he lived across town. I agreed, thinking nothing of it. After all, it was family, and it was perfectly normal for him to spend the night at our place. What I hadn't anticipated was how the night would unfold, after everyone else had gone to bed. Steve had retired early, feeling tired after the long day, and left me alone with Alex in the living room. We sat there on the couch, chatting casually about his life, work, and recent adventures. The conversation was lighthearted at first, but gradually something shifted. I don't know if it was the wine or the intimate setting, but Alex's gaze seems to linger on me a little longer than usual. "You know," Alex said, his voice lower than before, "I've always admired you, Auntie. You're different from other women." I chuckled nervously, brushing off the comment. "Oh, come on, Alex. You're sweet, but I'm just your aunt." "No, I mean it," he insisted, leaning a little closer. "Uncle Steve is lucky to have you." His words left me a bit unsettled, but I didn't want to make things awkward. I tried to steer the conversation back to safer topics, but every time I tried, Alex would return to subtle compliments, each one a little more personal than the last. His tone was playful, but there was an undeniable tension growing between us. I wasn't sure how to handle it, especially knowing Steve was just upstairs. As the clock ticked past midnight, I began to feel a strange sense of guilt, though I wasn't sure why. I hadn't done anything wrong, but the way Alex was looking at me made my stomach flutter in ways it shouldn't have. Still, I didn't want to overreact. This was Steve's nephew, and I trusted him. But something in the air felt different that night. The room felt smaller, or maybe it was just the way Alex's presence seemed to feel it now. His attention was unwavering. His words measured, and his eyes followed every slight movement I made. I couldn't help but notice how his boyish charm had matured over the years. He wasn't the young, awkward kid I once knew. He had grown into a confident man, and in that moment, his confidence was directed squarely at me. "Why don't we play a game?" Alex suggested, leaning back casually on the couch, as though he were still perfectly at ease. "It'll be fun. We used to play games all the time when I was younger. Remember?" I hesitated, sensing a subtle shift in his tone. "What kind of game?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, nothing serious," he said with a mischievous smile. "Just something to pass the time, since it looks like neither of us are tired." I glanced toward the staircase, half expecting to hear Steve's footsteps coming down. But there was only silence. I felt an odd combination of vulnerability and curiosity. It was just a game, right? We were just sitting there talking. What could go wrong? "All right," I said, slowly crossing my arms. "What do you have in mind?" Alex's grin widened as he grabbed a deck of cards from the coffee table. He shuffled them effortlessly, the cards flipping through his fingers with ease. "Let's start simple. Every time you lose a round, you have to answer a question honestly. No lies." It seemed innocent enough, though the intensity of the situation wasn't lost on me. I agreed, thinking it would be harmless. After all, I had nothing to hide. And it was better than the lingering tension that had been hanging between us. The first few rounds were uneventful, filled with light questions about work, hobbies, and family. But as we played, I couldn't help but feel the closeness growing between us, the playful energy turning into something heavier. I could see the challenge in Alex's eyes, like he was daring me to push the boundaries of this game. Then came a round I lost, and Alex asked, "Have you ever felt like someone other than Uncle Steve understood you better?" The question caught me off guard. It wasn't the type of thing I expected from him, and I couldn't help but feel a blush rise to my cheeks. "What kind of question is that?" I laughed nervously, trying to deflect. "Hey, no lies. Remember you promised his smile was teasing, but there was a seriousness beneath it." I swallowed hard. "I don't know, Alex. Maybe at times, but Steve is my husband. He's always been there for me." "Yeah, but has there ever been someone else? Someone who made you feel seen?" His voice dropped lower, and I felt the weight of his words settling over me. I stared at him for a moment, unsure of how to respond. There was a line we were tiptoeing around, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep it from being crossed. "I think we should stop," I said quietly, my voice faltering slightly. I stood up from the couch, suddenly feeling the need to create distance between us. But Alex wasn't ready to stop. He stood up too, closing the space between us faster than I anticipated. "Auntie, we're just talking," he said softly, his eyes searching mine for something I wasn't sure I wanted to give. "It's just a game, right?" My heart raced. It was just a game. But it didn't feel like one anymore. I backed away from Alex, feeling the tension in the air grow thicker with each passing second. It was no longer the playful game he had suggested. It felt like something else entirely, something I couldn't quite define. I wasn't sure if I was imagining things, or if the energy between us had truly shifted into something more dangerous. "It's late, Alex," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We should both get some rest." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he kept his gaze locked on mine, his expression unreadable. It was as if he were weighing something in his mind, trying to decide whether to push further or let it go. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice softer than before. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I guess I just got carried away." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, grateful that he seemed to recognize the line we had approached. "It's okay," I replied, though my heart was still racing. "Let's just call it a night." But as I turned to head upstairs, Alex reached out and gently touched my arm. The contact was subtle, but it sent a jolt through me nonetheless. I stopped in my tracks, unsure of what to do. "Auntie," he said quietly, his tone now serious. "I wasn't lying when I said I admired you. I don't want you to think I was just joking around. You've always been special to me." I turned back to face him, my emotions swirling in a confusing mix of flattery and guilt. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to brush it off, to pretend that his words didn't affect me. But another part of me, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, felt drawn to the sincerity in his voice. "Alex," I began. But he cut me off. "I'm not trying to cross any boundaries," he said quickly, as if sensing my hesitation. I wanted you to know, that's all. I'll go to bed now, I promise." For a moment, we stood there in silence. The only sound, the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. I could hear Steve snoring softly from upstairs, completely oblivious to the charged atmosphere that had taken over the living room. Finally, I nodded, unsure of how else to respond. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Good night, Alex." He gave me one last look, one that seemed to carry more weight than any of his words, and then slowly made his way to the guest room. I stood there for a moment longer, staring at the space where he had been, trying to make sense of what had just happened. When I finally made my way upstairs to my own bedroom, I found Steve sound asleep, completely unaware of the strange, almost surreal tension that had passed between Alex and me. I lay down beside him, my mind racing. I hadn't done anything wrong, but the guilt still gnawed at me. I hadn't stopped Alex's flirtation as firmly as I should have. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us. Something I couldn't ignore. As I lay there in the darkness, I wondered what the morning would bring, and whether things would ever truly go back to normal. Morning light filtered through the bedroom curtains, but I barely noticed I had spent most of the night tossing and turning, replaying the events with Alex in my mind. I knew we hadn't crossed any clear boundaries, but something about the night before felt unresolved. Like we had come too close to a line neither of us should have approached. I tried to shake off the unease as I got out of bed. Steve was still sleeping soundly, unaware of my inner turmoil. I quietly slipped out of the room and headed downstairs, hoping a cup of coffee might calm my nerves. When I reached the kitchen, I found Alex already there, sitting at the table with a mug in his hands. His eyes met mine immediately, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I wasn't ready for this conversation, but it seemed unavoidable now. "Morning," he said, his voice careful as if testing the waters. "Morning," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I busied myself with the coffee machine, trying to ignore the awkwardness hanging in the air. For a few moments there was silence between us. The tension from the night before was still there, lingering like a storm that hadn't quite passed. "I'm sorry about last night," Alex finally said, breaking the silence. "I didn't mean to make things weird." I paused, my back still turned to him. Part of me wanted to tell him it was fine, to downplay the entire thing and move on. But another part of me felt compelled to address the tension head on. If we didn't talk about it now, it would only fester. "You didn't make things weird," I said carefully, turning to face him. But we came close to something that probably shouldn't have happened. Alex looked down at his coffee, his expression serious, I know. He admitted I shouldn't have said what I did. I don't know. I've always looked up to you, and I guess it got confusing last night. I sighed, finally sitting down across from him. "Alex, I understand and I appreciate your honesty. But we can't let things go down that road. You know how much I care about you. But I'm married to Steve, this can't go any further." He nodded, his face a mix of regret and understanding. "I don't want to mess things up," he said quietly. "You and Uncle Steve mean a lot to me." I could feel the weight of his words, and despite everything, I felt a sense of relief. We had danced around something dangerous, but now it seems like we were both pulling back, before any real damage was done. It wasn't going to be easy to forget the subtle electricity of the night before, but we had drawn a line in the sand, and it was clear where we both stood. "I'm glad we can talk about this," I said softly. "We'll move past it, but we just need to be more careful." Alex smiled faintly, though there was still a trace of awkwardness in his expression. "I'll be better," he promised. "No more late-night card games, I swear." I chuckled, the tension finally easing a little. "Good plan." As we finished our conversation, the sound of Steve's footsteps coming down the stairs echoed through the house. I glanced at Alex, silently reassuring him with a look that said everything would be all right. Steve entered the kitchen with a yawn, completely unaware of the emotional roller coaster that had unfolded between Alex and me in the span of a few hours. "Morning, you two," he said, grabbing a cup of coffee. "Didn't stay up too late, did you?" Alex and I exchanged a brief glance, sharing an unspoken understanding. "No, not at all," I said, smiling. "Just a quiet night."